Good afternoon, everyone. Today, I'm going to discuss about antimicrobial antibiotics, particularly tuberculosis and leprosy. And I want to cover today only the rifampicin and isoniazid of their uses in tuberculosis. And if you talk about the mycobacterium, they can cause tuberculosis and leprosy. Tuberculosis is caused by Mycobacterium tuberculosis, and leprosy is caused by Mycobacterium leprae. There are also several atypical Mycobacterium also, and they can cause infection in humans, especially in the immunocompromised patients. For example, Mycobacterium avium intracellular complex and Mycobacterium marinum, which cause swimming pools granuloma. So such infections are there. So uh, coming to the TB infection, it causes mainly active infection in your lungs. It can cause cavity, it can cause pneumonia and everything. The primary organ to be affected is your lungs, infected lungs. And coming to the treatment of tuberculosis, we have first line and second line therapy. In first line therapy, it's further divided into essential and supplementary. In essential drugs, we have isoniazid, symbolized as H, and rifampicin, we have R, pyrazinamide, we have Z, and ethambutol, we have E. So the rifampicin and ethambutol, they have their first names in their letter, first letter in their names. That is R for R and E for E. The pyrazinamide has middle Z, so you can write Z. Isoniazid you have to remember as H. And supplementary we have streptomycin belonging to aminoglycoside group, and we have rifabutin and rifampicin. The rifabutin and rifampicin are used when the rifampicin has contraindications. For example, in HIV/AIDS patient, because rifampicin is your enzyme inducer, it can metabolize other drugs as well. So in such conditions, uh, we should replace the rifampicin with rifabutin or rifampicin. Okay, nowadays they have banned the streptomycin. Okay, there is no use of streptomycin in tuberculosis nowadays. They are not using streptomycin nowadays. And coming to the second line drugs, and these are used in your MDR-TB and XDR-TB. Okay, mainly in multi-drug resistant tuberculosis, they will use these kind of drugs. What drugs we have? We have thiazidone, we have paraminosalicylic acid, we have ethionamide, we have cycloserine, and other drug belong to aminoglycoside groups like kanamycin, capreomycin, amikacin. So these three drugs, kanamycin, capreomycin, and amikacin, they are belonging to aminoglycoside groups. And ofloxacin, levofloxacin, and moxifloxacin. These three are belonging to fluoroquinolone groups. So we have three drugs from aminoglycoside groups, and we have three drugs from fluoroquinolone groups. And other drugs are linezolid and one drug from macrolides, that is clarithromycin. So I will repeat it again: thiazidone, paraminosalicylic acid, ethionamide, cycloserine, kanamycin, capreomycin, amikacin, ofloxacin, levofloxacin, moxifloxacin, linezolid, and clarithromycin. And today I'm going to discuss only about isoniazid and rifampicin. Okay. And coming to the isoniazid, it is a prodrug actually. So it is activated into active metabolite by the enzyme called catalase peroxidase enzyme. This catalase peroxidase enzyme is coded by the uh, code called CATG gene. Okay, it's a gene called CATG. An active metabolite. This active metabolite will inhibit the enzyme called ketoenoyl reductase, and which is coded by the gene called INHA. And this enzyme ketoenoyl reductase is responsible for the formation of mycolic acid synthesis, which is the essential component of your tuberculosis cell wall. So if you inhibit this enzyme ketoenoyl reductase, then cell wall will not be formed and tuberculosis will die. And these mechanisms are taken place by oxygen dependent pathway, that is catalase peroxidase reaction. Okay, so I will tell the mechanism of action again. Isoniazid, it is a product. It is activated by catalase peroxidase enzyme, and this catalase peroxidase enzyme is encoded by your CATG gene. And active metabolite will inhibit the enzyme called ketoenoyl reductase, which is responsible for the formation of your mycolic acid synthesis in your cell wall. And all these mechanisms are dependent on O2 dependent mechanism, that is catalyzed by catalase peroxidase reaction. And ketoenoyl reductase, it is coded by the enzyme called INHA. Going to the next slide, and isoniazid is the most important drug in your tuberculosis. It is one of the bactericidal drug, and mycobacterial strains, they are very highly susceptible to isoniazid if the resistance is less than 4%. Okay, and if you talk about the mycobacterium, there are resting. It can be in the both phases, resting phase as well as in the multiplying phase. It is bacteriostatic towards your resting phase, but it is bactericidal to your rapidly multiplying organisms. So it is effective against your rapid multipliers than slow multipliers. So that's what you have to remember. And it is effective against your intra as well as extracellular mycobacteria, whether it is inside the cell, whether it is outside the cell. The isoniazid is effective against your mycobacteria. So key point to remember: it is bactericidal against rapidly multiplying organisms, and it is bacteriostatic towards your resting microorganisms. And it is effective against intra as well as extracellular mycobacteria. So action is most work against your rapidly multiplying bacilli than your slow multipliers. And it is also widely distributed in your body, including your CSF. So that's why it is also used in your TB meningitis. And it is also effective orally, and it is metabolized by the process called acetylation. And this acetylation process is also genetically controlled. There are slow acetylators and fast acetylators. And fast acetylators will metabolize your drug so soon. So they should require very high doses for that. And if you see the slow acetylators, they will metabolize very slowly, and they require very less doses. So these slow accelerators, they are predisposed to toxicity called peripheral neuropathy. So that's why we have to use pyridoxine for as prophylaxis in such patients. And it is an essential component of your multi-drug therapy for tuberculosis, and it is solely used for your prophylaxis of tuberculosis. It can be used alone for your prophylaxis of tuberculosis and also for your latent tuberculosis infection. And resistance to your isoniazid occurs due to mutation in your CATG gene, that is coding for your catalase peroxidase enzyme, as well as for your INHA gene, which codes for your ketoenoyl pyruvate reductase. And mutation in CATG is responsible for your high level resistance for this drug, whereas mutation in INHA is responsible for cross resistance to the second generation drug ethionamide. So I will tell it again. The CATG gene is responsible for resistance. Mutation in CATG gene is responsible for your high level resistance, and mutation in INHA gene is responsible for your cross resistance to ethionamide, not ethambutol. Ethionamide is second generation anti-tuberculosis agent. I told you it causes peripheral neuritis, and it can be prevented by treating with pyridoxine, that is vitamin B6. And reason for this, isoniazid inhibits the enzyme called pyridoxine kinase. That is the key enzyme for converting the pyridoxine to pyridoxal phosphate. The pyridoxal phosphate is your active metabolite and for myelin synthesis. But if isoniazid inhibits this enzyme, pyridoxal kinase, then the pyridoxal phosphate will not be formed, and it causes pyridoxine deficiency and leads to peripheral neuritis. So you should give prophylaxis as pyridoxine to prevent neurotoxicity. And it is also hepatotoxic. So all the first generation agents, most of them are hepatotoxic. Okay, except ethambutol and streptomycin. And it can also cause hemolysis in G6PD deficient patients. And incidence of your hepatotoxicity increases with age and with your alcohol consumption and in postpartum period of 3 months period. Okay, so I will tell it again. The main side effect of pyridoxine is peripheral neuritis, and so you should prevent it by giving pyridoxine prophylactic therapy. And most of your first generation antituberculous agent or hepatotoxic and can cause hemolysis in G6PD deficiency as well. And this hepatotoxicity increases with age, daily alcohol consumption, as well as postpartum 3 months period. And isoniazid is also inhibits your monoamine oxidase A enzyme. So it can also cause cheese reaction when you combine this drug with tyramine containing foods for food products like cheese. It can cause cheese reaction. And other side effects are rash, it can cause fever, it can cause anemia, it can cause optic atrophy, it can cause your seizures, and can cause neurotoxicity like lupus-like syndrome, SLE, psychosis, gynecomastia. These are very important side effects. They can cause any one of your MCQs in your NEET exam. So you should be thorough with all the MCQs. So isoniazid inhibits monoamine oxidase A. So you should not combine it with cheese containing products like tyramine. And it can cause rash, it can cause fever, it can cause anemia, optic atrophy, seizures, lupus-like syndrome, SLE, psychosis, and gynecomastia. Now coming to the rifampicin. Rifampicin is derivative of rifamycin. Okay, and other derivatives are rifabutin and rifapentin. And it is a bactericidal agent. It acts both dividing and non-dividing mycobacterium. And it acts by the mechanism of action is it inhibits the DNA-dependent RNA polymerase. I will tell it again. It is a derivative of rifamycin. Other derivatives are rifabutin and rifapentin. It is a bactericidal agent. It acts both dividing and not dividing mycobacterium. And it acts by the inhibiting the enzyme called DNA-dependent RNA polymerase. And it undergoes enterohepatic circulation. It is metabolized in your liver. So it is safe in your renal failure because it is metabolized in the liver. That is very important point they can ask in your MCQs. And metabolites are colored and they can give orange color to a urine, okay, and secretions. So it is eliminated mainly in your feces. So it is safe in your renal dysfunction. And mainly food interferes with your absorption of the rifampicin. So it must be given in your empty stomach. And it penetrates all your membranes like blood-brain barrier and placental barrier. Since it penetrates the blood-brain barrier, it is effective against your TB meningitis. And it is also effective against intra as well as extracellular bacilli. And it is the only bactericidal drug which can cross your cavity, caseous lesions in tuberculosis, and it is active against your dormant bacteria, which is situated or which settles in your solid caseous lesions. And apart from tuberculosis, rifampicin is also used in leprosy to delay the resistance to dapsone. The main treatment we are giving for 1 month therapy is dapsone. To delay the resistance to dapsone, we are combining it with rifampicin once monthly dose. Okay, remember that point. And it is the most effective and fastest acting drug in leprosy. And other uses, it can also be used for prophylactic therapy in case of meningococcal and streptococcal carrier states. And because they will destroy the carrier states in your nasal cavity, nasal epithelium. And rifampicin can also cause light chain proteinuria. The side effects I'm going to talk about is mainly it causes light chain proteinuria. It may impair your antibody responses, and it is also hepatotoxic. It can also cause your skin rash. It can cause your flu-like syndrome. More prominent with intermittent regimen. Nowadays, we are giving daily regimen, so we cannot see this flu-like syndrome anymore. And we have the side effect anemia also. And hepatotoxicity due to rifampicin is uncommon without pre-existing liver disease. So if it causes hepatotoxicity, it causes more hepatotoxicity, particularly in patients with already established liver diseases. And it presents as hyperbilirubinemia without SGPT elevations. Okay. And I told you that rifampicin is a powerful enzyme inducer. It can enhance the metabolism of many drugs like anticonvulsants, oral contraceptives, oral anticoagulants, and antiretroviral drugs. If you compare rifampicin with rifabutin has less chances of drug interactions. That's why it is equally effective like rifampicin. So it is used in the treatment of tuberculosis in AIDS patients receiving antiretroviral drugs. As rifampicin will metabolize these antiretroviral drugs very fast. So we should use rifabutin in such cases. And if the females are using oral contraceptives, they should either increase the dose of the pill or they use alternative method of your contraception. Because same reason, rifampicin is an enzyme inducer. It can induce the metabolism of oral contraceptives very fast. So you should increase the dose of the oral contraceptive pills, and you should use alternative method of contraception. And para-aminosalicylic acid, it will delay your absorption of the rifampicin. Okay, therefore you should not combine these drugs, para-aminosalicylic acid with rifampicin. And if you it also metabolize your warfarin therapy. So if the patients are receiving anticoagulants, they should shift to unfractioned heparin or low molecular weight heparin if rifampicin is being used for the treatment of the tuberculosis. And rifampicin is secreted in the bile, so it does not require any dose adjustment in your renal failure. We know that for the drug of choice for meningococcal meningitis is ceftriaxone nowadays. Insulin can also be used, but the drug of choice is ceftriaxone. And the penicillin cannot be used for the prophylaxis. For the prophylaxis of the meningococcal meningitis, the drug used is rifampicin and ceftriaxone. Because the rifampicin and third generation cephalosporin only, they eliminate the nasal caries of meningococcus. That's why the rifampicin is used for your prophylaxis of meningococcal meningitis. And another important use is rifampicin can also be used in your MRSA, methicillin resistant Staph aureus. And coming in, if you are seeing in pregnancy, rifampicin is the least toxic drug, anti-tubercular drug, and it is also safest drug in pregnancy. And rest of the drugs we will see on next day. Thank you for your kind attention.